Keir Starmer and this Labour government have broken every promise under the sun, and their leadership has been brought into serious questions. Everything they set out in their manifesto was a lie, as they have went and done the opposite to what they said. That is being represented in recent data, and acts as a huge boost for reform. In today's video, we will discuss in detail, whilst also going over all of the latest news from up and down the country. But first, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel and join our fast-growing community. Just a quick one to say we have new Stuck Farmer t-shirts available on our store. Go grab them now. They are available at britishstand.com or check the link in the description. New polling has shown the shocking rate Labour is hemorrhaging support in Scotland, with Reform being one of the main beneficiaries. Keir Starmer's unpopular leadership has seen Labour's vote share north of the border crash from 30 to 23%. That means if an election was held today, Labour would lose 13 of their 37 seats, equating to 35% of their representation in Westminster. And many of those remaining 24 seats concentrated in the central belt would be won with razor-thin majorities. So much so, a 1.5% swing to the SNP would see them lost another 10 seats. Labour voters appear to be taking an anyone but Labour approach, with the Conservatives the main winner up 3%, while Reform and the Liberal Democrats are up 2%. A Scottish Conservative spokesperson said, "Scottish voters who put their trust in Labour at the general election are already feeling betrayed by their broken promises on taxation and winter fuel payments for pensioners." Like the SNP, Labour's solution to everything is to hike taxes. Scottish workers and businesses, already the highest taxed in the UK, are reeling from Rachel Reeves' brutal budget. Only the Scottish Conservatives are standing up to the socialist consensus at Holyrood, which is crippling household finances and economic growth. This leaves Reform within touching distance of becoming the third biggest party in Scotland by vote share, just 1% behind the Conservatives on 15%. The SNP would be the largest on 30%. Remain backing SNP-led Scotland may not appear to be the most fertile election ground for Reform, but as Professor Sir John Curtis outlined this weekend, the plummeting approval of Westminster's Labour government has been damaging Labour in Scotland's devolved parliament based in Holyrood too. The polling guru revealed that in August, just 7% of Labour voters were switching to Reform, but that figure has doubled to 14% as Starmer's unpopular leadership continued to drain Labour support in Scotland. Reform, once reliant on winning disillusioned Conservative voters, is now primarily benefiting from Labour, opening up the possibility of it becoming a key player in the Scottish Parliament. According to Professor Curtis, Nigel Farage's party could win as many as a dozen seats if the Scottish elections were held tomorrow. Crucially, this would mean neither the Unionist or Independence parties could form a majority government and may have to reach out to Reform to form a government. Such a move would severely harm the SNP's ambition for a second referendum on Scottish independence. It is a similar story in Wales, with Reform surging at Labour's expense. Latest analysis shows Reform could become the third biggest party in Senedd, Wales's parliament, increasing their members from 0 to 17. Senedd elections use a proportional voting system, which more accurately reflects the electorate's wishes, benefiting Reform far more than Westminster's first-past-the-post (FPTP) system. Reform secured 223,018 votes in Wales in the general election, making them the third biggest party by vote share, but had no MPs elected. Their candidates came second in 13 constituencies in Wales, part of some 98 in the UK as a whole. In other news, savers are warned they face a £605 million ISA stealth tax raid, as experts have unveiled hidden figures in the budget small print. The Chancellor has extended the ISA allowance until 2030, which effectively reduces the real value of ISAs over time due to inflation. The freeze is expected to generate substantial revenue for the Treasury over the course of Parliament, as more savers will be forced to keep money outside of their tax-free ISAs. If the ISA allowance had kept pace with inflation, savers would be able to deposit nearly £26,000 in their ISA, figures show. By April 2030, calculations by Interactive Investor suggest the inflation-adjusted figure should have risen to £29,500. Experts have warned that Labour's extension of the freeze effectively blocks savers from shielding more of their wealth in ISAs. Jason Holland at Evelyn Partners said, like the frozen income tax thresholds, which are drawing millions more people into the higher rates of tax, the freeze on ISAs is effectively a stealth tax. Extending out the freeze to 2030 will certainly have a big impact, especially given the steep reductions in the annual capital gains exemption and dividend allowances set in train by the previous Conservative government and Labour's increase in the rates of capital gains tax. Myron Jobson, expert at Interactive Investor, explained that without adjusting for inflation, the frozen allowance leads to a de facto reduction in its value. He said, inflation reduces the purchasing power of money over time, so a fixed ISA allowance allows you to have less in real terms each year. The freeze affects all ISA types, with lifetime ISAs remaining at £4,000 and junior ISAs at £9,000 until 2030. The Treasury is set to earn £15 million in 2026 to 2027, £90 million in 2027 to 2028, £265 million in 2029 to 2030, 2028-29, and a substantial £605 million in 2029-30. The government is expecting to raise over £600 million from ISAs as the move to freeze the threshold will push more people to max out their allowances, as it will effectively be worth £14,000 by 2030. Any extra money will then have to go into general accounts liable to taxation through dividends, capital gains, or income tax bands if they're saving money. The £600 million earned is substantial, as it highlights the effects of inflation and what freezing limits can do for allowances. Alice Hain, personal finance analyst at Best Invest by Evelyn Partners, the online investment platform, said, along with all the freezes to other personal tax thresholds, people will find more of their income gets swallowed up by tax as their income rises. However, when people consider the hike in capital gains tax rates and the proposal to bring pensions within the confines of IHT, savers need to be thankful that the ISA allowance remained the same and did not get reduced. Although the allowance will continue to drop in real terms and become less valuable, Sarah Coles, personal finance expert at Hargreaves Lansdown, explained that the freeze will provide some certainty over allowances until 2030, which is very welcome, as it promotes stability to the cornerstone of people's finances. However, she warned, the longer it continues, the more people will bump up against the limits and need to invest outside an ISA. Of course, now that the allowances for dividend tax and capital gains tax have been slashed, and the rate of capital gains tax has been hiked, it means investors being stuck with a bigger tax bill as a result. The freeze on ISA allowances will likely push more savers into paying tax on their interest outside of ISAs. This is due to the personal savings allowance, which is linked to income tax bands. Basic rate taxpayers can earn £1,000 in savings interest tax-free, but this drops to £500 for higher rate taxpayers and disappears entirely for additional rate taxpayers. As wages rise and more people are pushed into higher tax brackets due to frozen income tax thresholds, their personal savings allowance may be reduced or eliminated. Holland said, alongside pensions, ISAs are one of the two core pillars of long-term tax-efficient savings in the UK, and are more important than ever given the record tax burden the country faces and an increasingly hostile environment for private savers and investors. Coles emphasised the importance of ISAs in this context. This is why it is important to open a cash ISA so your savings are sheltered from any tax that would be incurred on interest. A Treasury spokesman defended the policy, saying, the average subscription is around £6,000 across all ISA types, making the £20,000 limit appropriate for the vast majority of savers. What are your thoughts on what we discussed in today's video? Let me know down in the comments section below. If you've not yet already, make sure you do drop a like on this video and subscribe to the channel for more British content. Thank you. Take care. Goodbye.